Hi everyone, it's Simon here. Welcome to our first video to help us all as city leads gear up for Indigitous hashtag. As mentioned, instead of meeting this week, I've asked you to watch this video so that we can get on the same page as we do our planning in our individual teams for the global missional hackathon. Now, there are two main topics I want to cover with you today, and I've invited some of our friends, your peers, who will share some stories and insights along the way. The first topic is on shaping your challenges. As you know, this is one of the key building blocks of a good hackathon. We're here to hack for Jesus, and we want our teams to work on projects that have missional outcomes. So thinking through what challenges to put forth is critical. This is something you and your team would want to spend time to think and pray through. I'm confident God will lead you and give you good and meaningful things to work on in your teams. So I'll be asking some questions like, what are some top tips for selecting challenges? What are some great places to find challenges to work on? And you hear from each other as well. My desire is that it would spark some other ideas for you. Remember, this is a learning community. So when you have an idea, a comment or a suggestion, or just a question or something to share, do it, because we can all benefit from one another. So let's jump right in. Shaping your challenges. All right, so first question. So Emmanuel, what are some top tips that comes to your mind when it thinks about selecting challenges or projects?
Okay, one, I can say you look at the vision for the challenge. You look at does it have a mission focus? Is it addressing the need? Is the need long term? So some of the things I always look at is if the challenge is it long term? Is it bringing a long term impact to the community? And two, behind the challenge does it preach the word of God? Yeah. So those are some of the two main things I look at.
What are some great places to find challenges to work on?
One, it can be a church, talking to a pastor, maybe a youth pastor. Two, it can be organizations that deal with humanitarian aid, that also deal in Christian organizations. Those are some of the good organizations to find challenges, to places to find challenges.
That's awesome. What are some organizations you've worked with, and what are some projects that has been cool that you've been part of?
I've worked with Mission Aviation Fellowship, and one of the projects I've worked on myself has been the online mission aviation map that shows people in different locations where the nearest mission aviation center is. And also I've worked on the electronic visibility gauge for the pilot to help them in landing during mountainous areas where they cannot be able to see. So it's an AI that organizes before they land. It tells them, okay, this place is clear. Even as they're trying to fly, it tells them, okay, this is a good running way. There's no obstacle within a certain distance.
Hey guys, I'm with Ali Lewellyn, and she, as you know, she helped lead our city leads the past 2 years. So we want to get some insights from her. Ali, tell us, what are some top tips when it comes to selecting challenges?
Yeah, so awesome challenges really make a hackathon. And I'll just start by saying there's this tension when you look at challenges, and it's kind of a spectrum. And one end of the spectrum is super, super local. And we've had a lot of feedback from the community through the years that people really want local challenges. So what motivates people is what's relevant in their local community. But the other end of that spectrum is people really want things that can be replicated beyond their local context. There's a ton of value in saying, hey, we built this to work here in our city, but it can work in your city too. And so we see when we talk about great challenges, they really ideally fall in the middle of both. So they're locally relevant, but more widely applicable. So what makes a great challenge? I'd say a couple of things. Firstly, is a great challenge is compelling. It has an awesome story that says, this is why this is important. This is why this needs to be solved. This is why we really care about the root issue. It has to be compelling. So a lot of times agencies will come in and say, for our challenge, we want you to digitize 1,000 pages of government documents, and here's why that's great. But the reality is no one cares. Like, a good challenge is compelling and people want to be a part of it. Secondly, I'd say a good challenge solves an actual problem. It doesn't solve a solved problem. And so not only does it need to be compelling, that it's exciting and interesting to people, but whatever gets built in response to it needs to truly be something that no one's already figured out. So, for example, a lot of times in hackathons like ours, people go, let's do a prayer app. And that's great. We're called to pray, and that's important. But the reality is there's 1,000 prayer apps out there. And so we really want to solve a root problem. So when people come and say, I want to build a prayer app, I always challenge them with, what's the thing you want your prayer app to solve that no other prayer apps are already solving? What we don't want to do is just build something that either no one sees as a problem or that other people have already solved. Next, I'd say a great challenge is sustainable. It needs to be something that doesn't require a company to pay thousands of dollars every month to keep it going. It needs to be something that if we build something that addresses this challenge, it will really, on the other side, be something that we can keep going. In my mind, in my experiences, I've worked with hackers, it's really what motivates them is seeing their work live on. Seeing your work not put in a drawer, not sidelined or marginalized, but that they were able to make a difference over the long term. So being sure that your challenge and your solution are sustainable is really important.
That's great.
I'd say a great challenge encourages collaboration. So if I write a challenge that I actually know all the things that it would need to solve that challenge, that's not really interesting. You know, a great challenge is something that says, if some people came in with really different experience, it would be awesome, and we would have a better response to this challenge. Next, I'd say a great challenge has provided all the data it needs. So if I say, let's build a library of copies of the Bible in thousands of languages, I need to be able to hand you those copies of the Bible. If I say, let's map locations of churches in the 1040 window, I need to be able to hand you those locations. A good challenge is one, whatever the data is, that you can provide the team that data, because then they're not spending their time scraping or searching. They're spending their time actually building something that can use that data.
That's great.
And the last thing I'd really say about a great challenge is it has to be properly scoped. A properly scoped challenge isn't too big and isn't too small. You want to write a challenge that has enough that you can accomplish some goals during the weekend, but also that's a big enough bite of the elephant that you have a stretch goal to keep working for. And so thinking about scope, you don't want to write something that really is going to take 10 people a year to finish. But you also don't want to write something that's going to be done before lunch on Saturday morning. So thinking about that balance of scope is really essential to what makes a good challenge. So those are my main thoughts.
That's great. That's awesome. One follow-up question is, what do you think are some places, quote unquote, places to find these projects or challenges?
Well, obviously on Indigitous.org, we have some challenges that you can start with, and there's some great work that's done there. Some of my favorite challenges, though, have really come that the churches have come together and said, what does our city need? And if we were, in light of the gospel, to reach out and care for the needs of our city, what would that look like? I did a session in New York City where we asked that very question, and it was amazing because initially they said, we need a Bible app or a prayer app. But as we met with the teams, they were like, hey, the real crisis in our city is housing. What does the church need to do to address the housing crisis in our city? And they built 10 or 12 amazing responses to their perception of the real need of our city. So I so encourage people to think about those questions in that light, less in the what's the Bible thing, what do Christians in this little Christian niche need or want or think about, but more what does the church have to give to the world to address those things that really need to be changed. And when we start thinking about those kind of questions, we come up with incredible opportunities. But people could also ask people around you, ask the pastors, ask some nonprofits, look at what's on the news, like look at the issues that are relevant in your city, and things will rise up that are going to be really worth it to work on and motivating to people to come join your event.
That's great. One clarification that most people need sometimes is what's the difference between a challenge and a project, and how would you do that? Yeah.
So a challenge is like a problem to solve, and a project is one solution to that problem. So a challenge could have 15 projects. There's never one way to address a challenge. A challenge says, this is a challenge that people face. How would you address it? And actually, some of the best hackathons I've been to have multiple projects that respond to that challenge, because then those multiple projects, those multiple teams spur each other on. Hey, we're going to solve it this way. Hey, have you thought about this? Oh, we thought about this. We also all have a unique perspective, right? And so as we share our unique perspective, we realize we need those multiple solutions, those multiple projects to really be able to solve that. There's never one size fits all solution.
Yeah.
And so that's the glorious part of a hackathon is we get to see all those things and bring them to the table.
Okay. Well, we want to thank our brothers and sisters for sharing some ideas and tips. What other questions do you have about challenges for your hackathon? Type them in our planning document and we can help answer those questions together. The second topic I want you to be thinking about in this video is about growing your community. You've heard me talk about how Hack is an event that is a catalyst to what God will begin to do in your city or country. It is important that we begin right now to think about what's next after the event. I know some of you are saying, wait a minute, I can't even get my act together for this event. You're asking me to think about the future? I hear you. This is not meant to add more pressure or burden on you. This is to encourage you to trust God to see what He might have in store for you. I believe each of you and the team members that are watching this as well, you are catalysts for God's mission in your very own context. The fact that you stepped up and said, God, I want to be used by you to shape this event and to lead others tells me that God has uniquely prepared you for such a time as this. I want to encourage you to start with prayer and say, God, would you lay on my heart a vision for what community could look like in my city or in my country? And God will answer that prayer. Let's hear from Jonah Jala, a software engineer, a friend of mine in Manila, Philippines, and she'll share some ideas on how community can look like after Hack. Let's hear from her.
We also continued with the partnerships of those whom we have challenged as sponsors for the hackathon challenges. And then when we have continued with those projects, we have also continued to invite those who went in the hackathon to take part in what has happening in those projects. And not only are they invited, but they are given the opportunity to also lead or facilitate those projects and meetups after as well.
That's great. Wow.
So
you challenge some of your community members to take up leadership. It sounds like that's one of the key things that you do.
Yes, and to be intentional about letting them step up letting them step up and lead their own meetups also in where they are. And then we have this story about someone who came from the southern part of the Philippines, and then he came to be a part of Indigitous Philippines, contacted us via Facebook, and then went to the event. And then when he went back to his place in the southern part of the Philippines, specifically in Iligan, he also mobilized the community there, started their own hub, the Iligan Indigitous Hub, and then had their own digital outreach also in about 6 months, I guess.
In fact, Khan from Iligan City is hosting a hack this year, isn't he?
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And it's like after a year, there's also, another one brewing in the.
That's awesome. Love it.
part of the-
Thanks, Jonah, for sharing. I really appreciate that. Well, we've come to the end of this video, or almost the end of the video. I just want to finish off with this simple activity. As you think about leading hashtag in your city, what is one word to describe the journey for you thus far? Perhaps what you see or feel God doing in your heart or life, and then briefly explain why you picked that word or phrase. Mine is adventure. Watching God unfold this whole global missional hackathon is truly an adventure. I've been so blessed to hear some of your stories, getting to join in with your faith adventure. That's quite an adventure for me, and such a delight to be in fellowship with you. So type this word and the brief explanation in our planning document so that we can all be blessed. And this is your simple homework. All the links that you need, we've talked about today, are in the description to this video. I've also included some other resources, like a webinar by Ali Lewellyn on building and sustaining a community, and some links to useful blogs and more. Thank you so much, City Leads and your team, for making time to watch this video. We'll see you soon on our next face-to-face video call. Bye.